So, what do you think happened?
This is making me remember of the last time we had someone just run off into the desert. Terrence.
Yeah.
That was north, though, wasn't that? Isn't that Washington State?
Wyoming.
Okay,
yeah,
so
he was
up
on
there.
the set for a Discovery Channel show.
Okay, so that was... So I immediately... I'm trying to think of some reasonable theories and then some off the deep end theories.
Yeah.
Reasonable theory. Where did it say he grew up?
Columbia, South Carolina.
So, reasonable theory. He's working in the desert.
This is only his second day, though.
Only his second day, but he went out, met a girl, apparently, in the area.
Well,
was he out drinking?
Met is a...
Okay, but regardless, he
Yeah.
was out partying, maybe, drinking. Not saying that's a bad thing, but imagine being hungover and working in the desert.
Yeah. Would be fun.
It wouldn't be fun. It could make you delirious. It could make you make stupid decisions. So he,
But it was an unseasonably cool day as far as deserts
what's
go.
unseasonable? Yeah, as far as deserts go.
Yeah.
And if he's like in the throes of some heartbreak because he wants to meet this girl and she's rejecting him, like you combined all that stuff, and I think it's hard for, I'll say us to realize because I don't think we've ever overreacted to a girl before.
Yeah.
I knew you through college. We never had, but like, in college when you'd meet the dudes who would fall apart over a girl, like would literally like go a little crazy.
Well, look at throughout history, like
in general, but I'm just saying like young men
have started wars over women.
Yes.
I mean,
but I'm just saying like we've all known dudes who've like kind of lost it temporarily for a few days. So if he's in the middle of this getting rejected, not feeling secure, maybe hungover. And again, this is all speculation.
Yeah.
I'm making stuff up here because I'm just trying to make sense of this.
Maybe he had an undiagnosed psychological issue that no one knew about.
He's under stress, working in hot conditions, and just maybe he's like, I'm going to go for a drive, and I tell him maybe he's completely delirious and goes and just drives off. And he's smashing around in the desert, like just kind of driving violently.
Yeah, maybe he just got angry and he just like went 100 miles an hour down a dirt road and like lost it.
Yeah,
and
I think that's...
It doesn't explain the multiple crashes.
It doesn't explain the multiple crashes or where he went.
Yeah.
Or did he crash? Well, actually, it kind of does because if he crashed like that, looking at the car, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, so I'll pull that back up. I mean, it's wedged in there pretty crazily. So if he just climbed out of there... maybe he was hot and he's like, I'm going to take my clothes off and go wander off into the desert.
Well, maybe he was dehydrated at this point and was starting to not think clearly.
He's making bad decisions and he's like...
The fact that he found his sock 3 miles away from the crash site leads me to think he...
And do they know it was his, though?
No.
See, that's where... Yeah.
But it was a Nike sock.
It was a Nike sock, and who else was out there in that spot? So it could be... But again, it's just... That, to me, is like a reasonable explanation of what could have happened. That's a lot of what-ifs to come together to make that happen.
Yeah.
More off the deep end, I immediately started looking up if there's the vortices in that area.
Oh, no.
Vile vortices.
Yeah, I remember those.
So, like, I know in Sedona, they claim that there's that stuff there. There's the energy that makes you think weird. And I've had friends, I won't say their names because they are normal, I'll say normal people, like not constantly into that type of stuff, that they went to an area in Arizona. I don't remember where.
Yeah.
But they were vacationing there and they were doing side by side, where you do the UTVs and you're driving through the desert and stuff. And they both said when they got to certain areas, they got really angry. Like they were having a great time and they started getting mad. And they were listening to our show and they were listening to one where they started to talk about vile vortices because they called me like, oh my God, like I don't believe in this stuff, but I was in that area where you guys said there was one and we felt weird.
Yeah.
And they were still in the area and they like locals were like, oh yeah. You know how locals are when there's a cool thing in your area. So again, take that for what you want to take it. To me, that's the off the deep end of he was affected by a vile vortice or something.
I like the off the deep end. For my off the deep end, I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah. Ooh, you're on the off the deep end train.
Yes. I think the more logical thing is obviously his behavior with this woman he had just met is not normal.
Yeah, she's obviously rebuffing him and he's not getting it.
He's still showing up.
Yeah.
So obviously he has something going on there. I think maybe other things in his life were going on at the time that people weren't aware of, and this kind of thing with this woman kind of just finally he snapped, and he left the job site. We don't know what he did before the car crash, but he got into multiple accidents, so he must have been, sometimes if you get delirious with rage, it causes you to not think clearly.
That's where I've never had that happen.
No,
but I've seen it firsthead.
It happens
of people that start doing weird crap, and you're like, oh my God, that's dangerous.
Combine a man's obsession with a woman, which like Joe and I have talked about, we've seen with friends in our lives, but there's ample evidence throughout history of men doing incredibly...
There's a whole different Bible because of that. King James Bible exists because of stupid decisions.
Men throughout the history of time have done incredibly stupid things over women.
The pursuit of women.
And I'm trying to think of the ruler of Rome that basically started a war over Cleopatra.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's medieval stories. And I won't go into it, but so combine maybe that obsession he had with this woman he had just met with just this rage that just came over him, and he would cause you to have impaired driving. So maybe he was just flying down the road, hitting stuff and smashing stuff, and then lost control, went up over this ridge.
And off-roading's fun, so even if he wasn't like...
Yeah.
I mean...
I think what happened is he probably was dehydrated, and he hit a bunch of stuff in his car, lost control, went over this ridge, landed in the ravine, probably hit his head hard enough to cause damage but not draw blood. Like if you hit your head really hard on the steering wheel, you're probably not going to bleed.
Yeah, it rings your bell though.
But probably
throw you off.
If you're already dehydrated and you get a bad concussion, he is probably just in a very delirious state of mind at that point, which would maybe, for some reason, he decided to strip his clothes off and walk into the desert. And my guess is he just kept walking, and they had a lot of heavy rains. Perhaps he walked into an area that, out in the desert when it rains, you can get flash floods like an instant. And maybe his remains were washed away in one of the flash floods.
Yeah, George Land talks about that. He's a PIO of right in the area, Joshua Tree National Park.
So like in a heavy rain, this ravine probably be filled with water. So I think the most logical explanation is he injured his head in this crash, and he was probably already dehydrated. He was filled with rage, just in a delirious state. He walked off into the desert, succumbed to the elements, and then...
I wonder if that delirium would be similar to when you have... what's the cold thing? I am off today. I can't think.
Hypo or hyperthermia?
Hypothermia.
Hypo.
Because I've experienced that firsthand with people I was hiking with. I'm sure I've told this on the show, but I'll repeat it. When I was doing Long's Peak with 3 other guys, I was staying back with one guy to wait for someone who was behind on the trail as a storm hit.
Yeah.
So because we didn't want to leave them in whiteout conditions, while 2 other guys continued on. So we stayed paired. We followed our rules, and they were going to go set up the camp ahead of us.
Yeah.
And it was raining, like sleeting, so you're getting wet, and it started getting real cold. And when we started coming up around this bend, they're 20 minutes ahead of us.
Yeah.
They were walking back, and they were dressed completely differently. And we literally and these are guys I've known forever. They're great hikers. Yeah. They know what they're doing. And I'm like, where are you guys going? Like, they should have been at camp. And they're like, we're going back to the car because our clothes are wet. We're 5 hours into a hike. Yeah. We're nowhere near the car. And what they did was, we got them warmed up, and they told us they realized, like, when you're warm up, they're remembering the decisions they were making.
Yeah.
They were soaking wet, and they were at the campsite. Instead of pitching the tent, they took the dry clothes out of their bags in the rain.
Yeah.
Took off their wet clothes and put on their dry clothes, which then got wet.
Yeah.
Instead of setting up the tent. And then because those clothes got wet, they were going to hike out.
Yeah.
It would have been 4 hours.
Yeah, they would have died.
And they would have, they would have gone. And they're like, I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
Like they've hiked with me a ton of times, and they literally could not make, we were at altitude. They're in hypothermia. They're making horrible decisions. Like we're like, nope, come with me. Like I remember forcing them. They're just kind of like wandering aimlessly.
Yeah. So honestly, I think, I don't know about the foul play thing. I think it's more simple than that. I think it's a combination of he was dehydrated.
I don't think foul play. He's in the middle of nowhere.
Maybe he was, dehydrated in a desert. That's going to dehydrate even more. Mm-hmm. He was clearly in a bad accident, multiple bad accidents.
Yeah.
Probably has a head injury. No blood, so not,
Yeah, they said his seatbelt was on, so even getting hit in the face with the airbag's like getting punched.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know that from being a firefighter. He could have
hit
the
side of his head on the side.
On a rollover.
Yeah.
The contents of your car will do more damage to you than
he could have gotten hit in the head with his laptop, his work laptop.
All the stuff in there becomes violent projectiles.
So just because there's no blood, you can't assume that he didn't suffer a serious head injury. Really bad concussion combined with dehydration would cause him to just be delirious. And I think he walked off into the desert, and then with the heavy rains they were having, his remains were washed out of the search area. They're probably still
I don't even
in
think they
region.
have to wash out. Think of Paul Miller's case. He was found pretty dang close to the trail. Oh, what, a year, 2 years later almost? Yeah. And they searched thoroughly. And it's based on that image from seeing the car from above, it's hard to find stuff.
And I'll just say I did view that image of the skeleton that was found a couple days ago, and to what you're saying, the skeleton was caked in mud. So it looked like it had been
moved.
Not necessarily been moved, but like muddy water had been flowing by it. Okay. And you can just imagine if the remains were in a flash flood or had any muddy sand, that would make it even harder for searchers to find the remains.
I turned the screen off, so I'm going to go look at it. I'm not sharing it.
Did I put it out? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't open it. Yeah, that's not... Okay.
That would be tough. Definitely hard to see from air.
Oh, 100%.
And you would
I'm zooming out here, and like, if it was the back of it, it would look like a rock.
You would literally have to walk right by it.
You can't tell that is what that is.
Yeah, you would have to walk right by it to see it. And for anyone listening or watching, we're not actually showing the image just out of respect, but I just want to make the point that...
Yeah, that it would be so hard to find.
The difficulty to find remains that have been exposed to rains in this type of a environment would make it really hard. So that's my theory. I do like the off the deep end vial vortices. I've never experienced something like that, but I mean, I've read lots of stories.
I would love to hear the coworker give an interview to get an idea what type of guy he is. Not saying it's his fault.
I'm sure he has.
But the dudes that work in that kind of situation are usually hard dudes.
Yeah.
They're probably like, if he's all like complaining about a girl or whatever, he's like probably not being nice to him.
Yeah.
Maybe he's like, you just get back to work. You know, like, we gotta get this. If he's being like aggressive, maybe that tipped him over the edge. Maybe. Again, not saying it's his fault. Yeah. It could have been like all the things, and the straw that broke the camel's back if the guy's kind of not nice to him on the job site. And I'm just thinking, I've worked on job sites with doing concrete and roofs and stuff. Yeah. Those guys aren't nice, but that's how they're built.
Yeah.
They'll call you names and crap like, hey, why'd you give me that? Well, you idiot. Like they're just not nice. So if he's like in all these weird states and then there's some dude jeering him a little bit, he's probably like, screw this crap, and drives off.
Yeah. We won't know. But so another puzzling case, but depending on what happens with this new skeleton that was discovered, we may have closure in this case.
Yeah, we'll keep you guys updated with that.